All right, hey everybody. Welcome back to the Jim Ryan Running YouTube channel. My name is Noah Tyndale, and I'm here with the Jim Ryan. We are here in Tampa, Florida, which is where the Ryans live, and we're graciously hosted by their church here in Tampa. And so, if you've been following along with us, we've been looking at some of Jim's greatest races. Jim's been able to react to kind of what he was thinking prior to the races, in the races, talk about his faith in the Lord with that. And we're going to do a few more here over the next couple of episodes. But before we do that, we have a couple of items here up front. Jim's going to share a little bit about what they are and how they're important to him.
Well, so for me, these were, if you will, moments captured in time because of performances that I would never have thought of as a young boy growing up, because I was the guy who was cut from the church baseball team, cut from the junior high basketball team, couldn't make the junior high track and field team. So these were not even in my realm of thought for awards or goals or whatever. So these are gifts that I think God gave me in the sense of the performances. This is ABC Wide World of Sports, given as a result of the 1967 race in Bakersfield, California, where I ran 3:51, and that year I was awarded their top athlete for ABC Wide World of Sports. This is the Olympic silver medal from the 1968 Olympic Games. Again, these are all things that when you're first starting in athletics, you hope to make a team. That was my first goal, was to make a team. And then for these things to transpire were gifts from God, I think, because of the enormous changes that took place in my life. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit, but this is just sort of a backdrop to the wonderful things that God did in answering prayer. Let me answer this first. When I was growing up in junior high, I went to church, and I remember one night going home after being cut from all those teams, and I kept thinking the pastor talked about prayer. I thought, well, I'll just experiment with prayer. So I went to bed that night, and my prayer was this: Dear God, I don't feel like my life is really amounting to much. I was measuring it more on world standards, and so nothing really had happened that was significant. And so I asked him to help me, and as I started to fall asleep, I said, oh, by the way, if you could show up in sports, I really appreciate that. And this is in junior high. And then after less than 2 years of running, I'm on my first Olympic team. So it was quite an enormous answer to prayer. But before we get to that, into the first 2 years, let's talk about how it all started way back in 1963 with a yellow school bus riding back from Kansas City.
Yeah, take us back, because the video we're going to look at today, you are in high school. You've developed a little bit. As you said, I mean, 2 years from your prayer to the Olympic team. I mean, that is unheard of. It's something that really only God could do. But there's definitely a backdrop there when you were a little bit younger, getting cut from the church baseball team. But take us through those next couple of years in that process to even get to this race we're about to watch today, which is one of your most important races ever. Walk us through the background.
My background is such that I made the cross-country team, and with that I got a letter jacket, and one of my goals with the letter jacket was to get a girlfriend. That didn't happen. But it made me a part of a team, which for me was a part of my, if you will, rewards as a result of having goals. And so I became a miler in the spring of 1963 out of necessity, because cross-country was 2 miles. I was disappointed. I thought, I'm a 2-miler, and I was running well at 2, so I'm racing now to a mile. My first time mile was 5:38. We're now in the spring. That was in the winter, the fall of 1962. 1963, we had a time trial. I ran 4:52, so I'm going to my first ever timed mile on the track, and it was at South High Imitation in Wichita. And I remember going up to one of the seniors on the team. I said, how do you run a race like a mile? And he said, it's easy. Stay with the leaders, and then with half a lap to go out, kick them. I thought, well, I'm a sophomore. Let's see what happens. And it turns out with 200 yards to go, as I started to kick, so did the other guy. We got to the finish line. He leaned. I finished second. He was the defending state champion at 1 mile. There was a 20-second improvement, so I was hooked. It was the beginning of wonderful things that led to racing more and more miles through my sophomore year and then going into my junior year.
It's amazing. That's amazing. And so I have written here that at some point you ran like a 4:33 mile. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's correct. That's what it was.
And then what was the next mile time off of that?
4:27. I progressed steadily through the spring of 1963 with better and better times. At the end of my first year, going from a 5:38 mile, I went to a 4:07. So it was an enormous improvement. And even now, as I look back on it, I have a hard time comprehending that. One, that it happened, but two, that I didn't have any kind of injuries. So we remained healthy during that period of time. But we get through 4:07. Now we're headed into my junior year. And there's one story to tell before we go to the yellow school bus. In 1964, during the winter, I was running on my own, training twice a day. And I remember one day getting really discouraged, and I thought, I can't keep doing this. I'm running in the snow, I'm running in the cold, falling on the ice, all by myself. And I had a lot of sympathy for myself. I was kind of a whiner at this point. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and talk to Coach Timmons and see if maybe he can offer some inspiration. So I went in and shared that story. It was cold, nobody to run with, and while the times I felt like I was growing, it was not significant enough. I thought I needed some help, and I was kind of complaining. So Coach Timmons listened for a little while. Now, having said that, we had established the year before trying to be the first high school boy to run under 4 minutes. And on that day when I went in and complained a little bit, he said, "Is that still your goal?" And I said, "Coach, it is." And he said, "Well, get out there and get going."
Yeah.
I wanted a pat on the back. He gave me a push out the door,
Yeah.
which is what I needed. I needed something to remember that it's not going to happen unless you're going to do it by the grace of God and stay healthy.
And it's amazing that you had somebody like Coach Timmons who
Yes.
was able to, he was kind to you, but he pushed you.
Yes.
He knew your potential
Yeah.
and where you wanted to go and said, okay, if you want to make this happen, go take that step. I think that's an encouragement, hopefully, to coaches as well. And you can push your athletes lovingly, of course. But that's a huge encouragement, I think, as well. Now, the video that we're about to watch, this is June 5th.
Correct.
1964. This is the Compton Invitational. Give us a little bit of context of like what this race is. I know that it's not a high school only race, right? So talk to us a little bit about going into this race and what you were hoping to do.
Let me do one more thing before I go there, Noah. In the spring of 1964, after a race in Kansas City, we're riding a school bus back to Wichita, which is the way you travel to the track meets. And I remember on that day, Coach Timmons always had someone come up and sit down beside him about their performance. And it was my turn. I went up and I sat down and I'd run 4:21. And his response was, "Do you think you can run faster?" And of course, you always think you can. And I suggested I could. And he said, "Well, I think you can too. I'm thinking 1 or 2 seconds." He's presenting a second time that I would be able to run under 4 minutes. And I sat there and I thought, how is that possible? Because I knew on that race, and this is really for our listeners as well, for young runners, you may experience pain, your legs hurt, your heads hurt, everything hurts, and you may think that's your maximum performance. As Coach Timmons did on that day, he took me beyond that, saying you can do something more. And so that leads up to this race, June 5th of 1964. And it might be interesting, just before the race started, one of the hardest things for me during this period of time was getting ready for the first, what would become first high school 4-minute mile, was getting my mind wrapped around that time and then having some kind of physical experience that would allow me to, so to speak, prepare for that. So one of the workouts just a few days before, he had me run 8 times a 440. They went this way. We were on a 3-minute interval. If you ran 60 seconds, that means you had a 2-minute rest. So they went 63, 57, 57, 57, 56, 55. The last one, 53, with an average of 57. His point in doing that was if you can run 8 440s and an average of 57, surely you can run 4 440s under 60 seconds. So he's working on my mind, but he's showing me physically as well. And then the last one in that whole series, just before this race, was he decided, he was the coach, that I would run 2 half miles under 4 minutes with a short rest in between. And the first one was 1:58.5, and the second was 1:58. Not a lot of rest in between, but those were all preparatory in terms of getting me to think and to experience what could happen on this night, Compton, June 5th, 1964.
What was your race day prep like? So you have kind of the weeks leading up and the days leading up. You have some of those workouts, but when the race day came, do you remember at all kind of what the morning was like, or leading into it?
I don't remember a lot, and the reason for that is that I was of the mindset that I would sleep all I could sleep on the day of a race. 2 reasons for that, and I recommend this for young runners. If you can sleep the day of your race, you'll have plenty of time to wake up. But number 1, you're resting. And number 2, you're not thinking yourself out of the race. So on that day, I slept a lot. And so that when I went to the race, which is late at night, I was ready to go, and I'd had rest all day. I hadn't talked myself out of it, which is one of the problems I think every runner experiences, is there's a certain element of nervousness, which is good. Adrenaline's great if you use it as a friend, but it can work in a negative way and talk you out of what's possible. So the day of the race, I rested a lot. My last meal was like 6 or 8 hours before, and it was a light meal because I experienced after less than 2 years of running, if I had too much on my stomach, I didn't do well in the race. I had problems afterwards. So it was a very light meal. The race was like 8 o'clock at night. As you can see, it's dark in the background, Compton, California. So my last meal was probably around 2 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's hard because whenever you're racing in the evening, some of you watching, usually at invitationals you're running midday or after school during the week, things like that. 8 p.m. is a different animal. It's, normally you're getting ready to go to bed or in the evening. And so it's interesting to hear that your mindset was about rest.
Yes.
That the preparation had already been done, right? I think oftentimes a lot of athletes, they get to race day and they think that's the time I need to be engaged in prep and everything. It's like, well, you've actually prepped over the last several months and weeks, and so now this is almost the celebration, and so you get to rest and then come in mentally engaged. That's cool to hear that was like that for you.
One other thing about this race that might be interesting, and that is I'm a high school junior. Everybody else is graduated from college or in college, and so we had some difficulty getting into this race. The only reason I was able to get in is that the day before, I shouldn't say the day before, the week before, in Modesto, California, I had run a 401 mile. So they said, well, it looks like you're good enough. We'll let you run on this greater, faster race in Compton, California.
Yeah.
So this race almost didn't happen because I was a junior in high school, and there's a lot of skepticism whether I could compete with these older runners, which is true. I didn't know whether I could. The week before, I had run well in a race in Modesto, California, the Modesto Relays. I'd run about a 401 mile. And so that was the, if you will, the door opener to come and run in this race. And so here we are at the very start. I'm walking up to the starting line, quite nervous. That's when I was holding the adrenaline the best I could, by the grace of God, letting it release as soon as the gun went off. So here we are, start of the race. And
let's hop into it. Let's watch this thing. We're going to react as we go. Jim's going to talk about what he was going through in the race. So let me just say this is a little bit awkward to watch because there's a camera on the home stretch and the back stretch. So let's start. Here's the very beginning. Everybody's being introduced. I just turned around. The other runners have been introduced. They're all very, very fine runners, 4-minute milers. Here's the gun. We're off. You'll notice I have a lot of head action, which I still am weak enough that I really hadn't learned to control that. Here's the back stretch. I'm in the mix, if you will, not really a part of the leaders, but it's all bunched together as they finish through roughly 300 yards of the race. And in just a moment, it'll swing around to the opening 440. Again, here's the quarter mile. The guy's holding up a sign. This is a rabbit in front. And you're like on pace here, right?
I'm on pace at this point. Now, something's going to happen on the backstretch. At that point, I'll take a short break. We're moving along. I'm in the pack of runners, and then I get bumped. I have very little balance because of a loss of hearing. And you'll see in just a moment, I'm going to get bumped and step off on the inside of the track, which I could have fallen at that point in time. But by the grace of God, I didn't. Coach Timmons, I remember him when it happened. He said, gee, can't get back into the race. So what happens is I step off, and then I have to jump back in the race. The very last, I was
now you're right in the back of the pack.
And way in the back of the pack, trying to regain some form. And as you can see, I'm the last person. But that's through the first half mile. And again, I'm exceeding my expectations because I'm staying with these guys. And the pace was originally to be, we had hoped 60-60. So the half at 2 minutes, I think it was 1:59, right on pace. The rabbit's falling off. We're going to come into the last 400 in just a moment with gun lap, the gun going off. You'll see a spark on puff of smoke. I'm not really in the race at this point, but I'm accelerating, running really wide, waste of space, waste of time, second and third lane, but I'm determined to get back in. I've lost track of the time, but as you can see, look where I am in the race. I'd wasted a lot of energy out there.
You're like lane 3 almost.
Oh, yeah, I'm in lane 3 way out there. And so now we're going to turn one more time to the straightaway and to see everybody coming across the finish line. I'm going to be dead last. You can't really see me in a still picture. You'll see there were 8 runners in front. I was number 8, actually. And we're going to come up to the finish with these 3 guys standing at the finish line with Coach Timmons on the right. Yeah. We're standing there trying to figure out what the time was. I was tired. We didn't know what.
So you don't actually know at this point?
No, I don't know at this point. And so then on the public address system, an announcer comes on and he said, well, we have something that's never happened before in a race. Yeah. We have 8 people under 4 minutes for the first time. And Coach and I were trying to remember whether I was 8th or 9th. Yeah. And it turns out we came to the same conclusion as the PA system that I was number 8. So I'm learning that just right here as Daryl Burleson, who's closest to me from the University of Oregon, was congratulating me, and then Archie San Romani, who is over closest to Coach Timmons, was congratulating me as well. And by the way, before I became the high school 4-minute miler, or before I set the record at 4:07, The previous high school record holder was the young man in the dark suit, Archie San Romani. So quite a bit of history there, but we're learning all at the same time. The 4-minute mile by a high school runner has just been accomplished.
Yeah, what an amazing feat. It's something that we've talked about even in the running world for the last, I guess, 60 years now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. One of the things that really stood out to me as I'm watching this now and have watched it before is you're a youngster. I mean, you are, 17 at this age, right?
I am.
And to be bumped like that, to have a moment of chaos and then to rebound so well, I think that's a testament to that like mental focus of, hey, God's called me to this.
Yeah.
He's got a plan for me, even if I'm bumped off for a second, like I get right back into it. Do you have any words? We'll reflect after your race in a second, but do you have any words for some young athletes in high school regarding like when you get bumped, staying true to who you are and who God's made you to be?
I would say that is true. In other words, you're going to have what we call speed bumps, if you will, things that perhaps you hadn't planned on but happened in your life, and they may come in training, may become things that you think the way you think the wrong way, as I did as a young boy, as a young runner. But let those be experiences that build the character that Christ has for you. The response should be more that it's an opportunity to learn than it's an opportunity for defeat. I've often said, and we tell our campers, failure is a temporary detour to success, and that temporary detour of getting bumped, by the grace of God, I got back on, and I became the first high school 4-minute miler. Coach Timmons was extremely good at that. That was one thing he always worked on, was not just the physical. And again, some of those workouts I gave before were to train me not only physically but mentally. And so when a coach, or even your parents or pastor, somebody asks you to do something that's out of your comfort zone, and it's not wrong or scripturally wrong, it's a challenge for you to take that and learn from it, because it'll be an experience that will help you later in life.
Yeah, what an encouragement. I think it's a challenge to us too, as Christians and as athletes, to always be thinking, hey, what does God want for me next? How might he use me to impact somebody else? It's really a fascinating story. Now, as you're reflecting here, and even as you were reflecting there after the race, what was the moments after you found out that you broke 4? What even the next couple of months, like what was that period after you had done that feat? What was that like?
Well, when it first happened, it was difficult to believe, because, and yet on the other hand, it was believable because it happened. Now that sounds like double talk, but when you're trying for something and it seems so hard and you're close, and then all of a sudden it happens, it's like a dream come true. So having said that, the night after the race, I really couldn't sleep. And so I remember tossing and turning and thinking, wow, the race time was to be 3:59, which we ran that night right on the money, 3:59. And as I reflected, I remembered it this way: it was Coach Timmons' goal, which I had adopted. I wanted to do what he thought we could do, and together it worked. And my thought was this, and that was as a result of a prayer: what would happen if I took on more responsibility, took ownership? And so that's one thing we talk about in our camps, the Jim Ryan running camps, and that is this: Coach can only take you so far. There are times when you have to take on that greater responsibility and what I call taking ownership. That night I started thinking, what happens if I maybe slept a little more instead of staying up late, which I didn't do much of, but occasionally, or did a better job of eating, or maybe a little bit more effort in the workout. Those are small things, but they're important things because they allow you to see, what God can do in your life.
Well, Jim, thanks for spending time talking about not just this race, but the lead up to it, the story of God's faithfulness and your faithfulness in that, right? And the result of some of the lessons learned as you're, I want to say, beginning your career.
It is.
You've been a little bit, growing in that, but 2 years from prayer to Olympic, you're really starting your real career here. So thanks for sharing some of that with us. I want to remind you, if you've been watching, that we've got registration. It's open for the Jim Ryan Running Camp this summer in Colorado. There's 2 weeks. And so we'll put a link to it actually in the notes and on the screen as well. So you can go register and hear Jim talk some more, hear some other counselors talk more, and give you some advice on how to be a better runner and how to honor God in that. Any final thoughts?
Just one thought. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone when you establish a goal. Most people have a fear of failure. You're going to fail at something, so you might as well fail at something you love and let God teach you through that, because with that failure comes success. So don't be afraid. take those challenges, get out of your comfort zone. You'll be surprised at what you can accomplish.
That's so true. Get out of your comfort zone, take some encouragement from this video, go out and run today, and we'll be back soon with another reaction from another race from Jim. Have a great day.